Hi, I'm Rachel Abbasi. Welcome to the Recovery Daily Podcast. As always, thanks for spending time with me. Happy Friday. I have my precious angel here on my lap sleeping. And today I wanted to talk about what it was like when the time between when I had my stroke and when I knew that I needed to leave my job and medically retire. I got an email from one of my listeners yesterday asking me about this time. How do you, like, what does it feel like? It's obviously devastating to be moving along in your career and then all of a sudden you have this stroke and you're no longer the person that you used to be. So it wasn't like just like that happened for me, where I realized that I wasn't the person that I used to be. It took me 2 years to realize that I wasn't the person that I used to be. And that 2 years was, I would say it was the hardest time of my life, but it's a toss up. Really, it's a toss up between the last couple years I was drinking and before I got sober, and those 2 years before I was able to accept that my stroke had changed me forever, that my brain was damaged goods and it was never going to be the way that it used to be. What didn't help was that I didn't quite know what was wrong with me yet. So I'm going to try to talk through how that felt, what I did, and hopefully it will be rather succinct and it will make sense. I'll try to remember as much as I can. But so what happened for me was I went on short-term disability immediately. And thankfully, I had short-term disability. So I went on short-term disability for 3 months. And during that time, I focused on going to the doctors that I needed to go to. And what I needed to find out from my doctors was, well, you just need to do your normal checkups, right? To go to the neurologist, to go to the cardiologist, to go to your primary care physician and start getting the documentation that's needed for short-term disability. And it did not even cross my mind during this 3 months of short-term disability that I would need any longer than that, because that's what I do. I'm like, you do what you need to do. I'm a rule follower. You do what you need to do and you're going to get better and you're going to get back to work and life's going to be the way that it was. No, it's not. No matter what I tried to do, life was not going to be the way that it was. So short-term disability, I did all of my doctor's appointments. My deficits were that I had a headache, a constant headache, the same one that I still have 5 years later. So a constant headache. And I had a difficulty sustaining eye contact with anything that would move. So if somebody was talking to me and they're blinking their eyes and their mouth was moving, like, it just makes me nauseous. And so things like scrolling on devices would make me sick, and all of this would exacerbate my headache. The other thing that I suffer from, and more so back then, was memory loss and short-term memory and word find, like language skills. So for this, I went to a neuropsychiatrist, and they did about a, I don't know, 2 hour test where I sat down with the neuropsychiatrist and then his other nurse or whatever she was, assistant person, and they perform these tests, and it's testing everything that we're capable of, like math, language, memory, all of these things, to see where do we fall now. So without having had a baseline, they really were taking my word for like where what my baseline is. I told them I never really struggled with any academic stuff because I didn't really. I was a math major. At work I was writing, I was doing graphic design, I did analytical stuff. So I didn't really struggle with academically. I didn't have any memory issues or anything. So when I took the test, what they found was that I had a mild cognitive disorder in the areas of language and memory. And what that looked like for me was things like leaving the faucet on, forgetting constantly. I still have it, just forgetting from, that feeling of like you're walking into a room and you're like, what did I come in here for? It's that, but it's like on steroids. It's just like it's constant. Or that feeling like you're having a conversation or you're in a conversation with somebody and you're like, what was I going to say? I have that, but again, it's like that on steroids where it's just all day long, every day. And yes, it has gotten better, but it's still very, very much there. It's very much inhibits me from being able to follow instructions. So one of the things that I learned about myself in the neuropsychiatrist test was that I can't follow instructions if they're told to me just one time. I have to hear something told to me like 3 times. And I can't be doing anything else. I almost have to shut my eyes in order to really ingest what the instructions are, translate them in my mind, and then perform whatever the instruction was. So I feel like if you're looking at the screen, Autumn looks a little awkward right now. These Weimaraners, they're so awkward looking. It's like a person with hair and ears. It's really weird. She looks weird right now. Anyway, so these are some of the things that I learned about myself. So I worked with HR and my boss and my doctors to come up with a program for how can I get back to work. And since my problems were, the main thing that stood out was the pain in my head. And since it was exacerbated by using my eyes, what the plan was is very much it mimics what a plan would be for somebody who has had a concussion, and that is to do the thing, do computer work, okay, which it was what I needed to do. So do my computer work for 15 minutes and then rest for 2 hours. And then I'd go back and do the computer work for 15 minutes and then rest for 2 hours. And I learned about myself as I was doing that. And some days I would do computer work for 15 minutes and I had to rest for 4 hours. Or sometimes I would do the computer work and then I would rest for 15 minutes and then do it again. And I was just like pushing myself. So I'm like, yeah, I have a headache, but I can still function, It was like I was trying to figure out what I almost started to forget about like I shouldn't be in pain because I was prioritizing so much that I have to go back to work. I have to go back to work. People have headaches and they heal. I have to go back to work. People break their arm and the arm heals. I have to go back to work. It never even crossed my mind that Rachel, maybe you can't go back to work. Okay. So, 3 months in, I got the application for long-term disability and I filled it out and I submitted it. And every day, almost every minute of every day, I was contemplating going on long-term disability or not because I wasn't any better, but I just kept thinking, I have to go back to work because that's what I know. That's what we have to do in society. Like I have to have a job. Um, Once again, thank God I had long-term disability that I had signed up for that. I try to tell anyone who's signing up for their insurance and benefits now, no matter what you think might happen in the future, sign up for long-term and short-term disability because you never know what's going to happen in your life. So I got to the point where I was talking with my boss, and he's like, Rach, we'll work together because I was like, telling my boss, well, I can probably work 8 hours. It just can't be continuous. I was a glutton for punishment. I probably can do it. I just can't do it continuously. So if it's okay with you, if I can work 8 hours in a 12-hour day, then, and it doesn't matter what time it is. And he's like, whatever you have to do, whatever you need for yourself, just do it. So I retracted my long-term disability application and I went back to work. And what I ended up doing was trying my best to stick to this plan of over time, like that 15 minutes on, 2 hours off, meaning computer work, it turned into a half an hour on and 2 hours off until it became 45 minutes on, meaning 45 minutes on the computer, 2 hours off and resting. And so I slowly increased the amount of time I was on the computer while still having a large chunk of rest in there. And I felt like I should be healing. If this is the plan that the doctors are giving me, my primary care doctor, my neurologist, if this is the plan that they think I should follow, then this is how I will heal. It's just, I can't stress enough how much that I just assumed that I was going to get better, that I was going to get back to normal. And so I think at this point I can fast forward because it was more of the same for 2 years where I continued to battle, to just battle myself, my pain. And I feel like over those 2 years, I was getting worse, but it was so not obvious that it was hard to tell um, until about, I would say, maybe 2 months before I ended up leaving my job. I started to get another level of pain in my head. So I started to develop this like, and I always had it. It just became more pronounced, like this layers of an onion kind of pain in my head. So the underlying headache, which I have right now, and if I look at the computer, I get the next layer, which is more of like a little more tension in my head. And then if I turn up the lights on my computer, it'll start being a little bit of a sharp pain. So that's why I'm not looking at the computer right now. That's out of choice. But so as I kept increasing the amount of time on the computer, I got to about 2 months before I was going to leave work for good, and I didn't know that yet. I was working 8 hour, 10-hour days. I ended up working as much as I used to work before I had my stroke. Not because I felt better, but because I believed that that's what I should be doing, that I should be healed by now and I should be working my normal schedule. But I was in a lot of pain constantly. Um, I don't really recall making a lot of mistakes, like in my writing and stuff like that. Um, I think we changed my duties based on my abilities. So I used to write articles for work. That was just one of the many things that I did. And we changed that because I had this like inability to think of words the way that I used to, that I would edit other people's articles instead of write my own. I could not build a concept in my head. Um, and to this day, I still have a hard time building a concept in my head. Like being creative when it comes to writing, I have a really hard time with that. Um, Thank goodness ChatGPT has been born. So, what ended up happening is I I started to have so much pain in my head that people could start being able to tell that I was, at the very least, uncomfortable, and at the most, unable to look at the computer when we were having Zoom calls, or Teams calls. So my very last day, I woke up for work. I had every intention of working a full day and for that day and beyond. And I was on a one-on-one call with HR, who was also one of my friends. And she asked how I was doing, and I said, I'm in a lot of pain. And I had gotten so used to saying that, I'm in a lot of pain. And she said, Rachel, you can't keep doing this to yourself. And I was like, but what else am I supposed to do? I have to work. Therein lies the problem. Um, I didn't have to work. I did not have to suffer. I did not deserve to suffer. And I did not, I did not, um, respect the massive health event that changed my life forever. I didn't honor my own body. And I just thought that, just like everything else in my life, I'm just destined to be unhappy. I'm just destined to have to work harder than everybody else to be happy. I just talked about that yesterday. I work hard to be happy. Well, I just thought, well, I just have to work a little bit harder to be happy. It doesn't have to be that way. And what I also didn't, I wasn't putting the company first when I was back at work, and I was trying to contribute, but yet I was uh, three-quarters of the value that I used to be, because there were things that I simply could not do anymore. And I was not. I was never willing to admit that because whether it was denial or just believing that things would get back to normal, um, I wasn't willing to give up. And so I did it for 2 years. I did it for 2 years, and I finally had that conversation with this HR person, and she said, "You have to take care of yourself." And I got off that call with her, and I shut my computer. It was like it just happened like that. I, it's like I surrendered. Um, I had so much pain in my head that I just couldn't do it anymore. Um, what I talk about a lot in this podcast is how my stroke recovery paralleled my sobriety. And so what that means is I reached the point of unmanageability. I could no longer live my life the way that I was living it and be happy. And it just what something had to change. And it wasn't planned, um, but there was no other choice. And so what happened after that was I reapplied for long-term disability. And I still didn't know at this point that I was not, that I was leaving my job. I didn't know that that's what was happening. But a gift that my job gave to me was when I went on long-term disability, we severed our relationship. Yeah, I stopped working for them. And the thing that, why it was helpful is that when one applies for Social Security disability, they you have to have been not working for, I think it's 90 days. It could be 60, but I think it's 90 days. You have to have not been working full time or part time at all for 90 days before you are eligible to start receiving Social Security. So if I had been on long-term disability, but I still was contributing part-time or something like that with my job, that would have delayed my ability to receive Social Security disability. I mean, I still had to apply for Social Security disability, which what I had heard was going to be a nightmare. I had heard that I was going to get denied. I even went to the extent of calling a lawyer and talking to them about how do I do this and not get denied. And so that lawyer looked at my, or listened to my case, and she's like, I don't think you have anything to worry about. And I was like, but everybody says like 80% of all people who apply for Social Security disability get denied. Well, not if you deserve it. Not if you had a stroke and you have been going to doctors and you have a documented record of what your deficits are, and that you can no longer safely or without pain perform the same tasks and make the same money that you used to make. And so I ended up applying. I actually was another really good thing about my company that I was with is the long-term disability that I have. They have a relationship with a company called Genex, Genex, and that company works on behalf of the long-term disability company to apply for you for Social Security disability. So it's in the best interest of your long-term disability insurance company for you to receive Social Security disability, because as soon as you get approved and you get your first check from Social Security, you have to pay back a certain percentage of what you have received in long-term disability up until that point. You may have to hit rewind and listen to that sentence again. I'm surprised that it came out right. So when I was receiving long-term disability, I was stocking away a certain amount of money, knowing that a certain percentage, I think it's 30% or something like that, that it might have been more than that. 50 I don't know. I was stocking away money knowing that if I get approved by Social Security disability, I have to pay back that Social Security disability ends up giving you back pay for the time that you were receiving long-term disability. And then in the end, where you end up is you get a certain amount of disability insurance from your long-term disability company, and you get a certain amount of disability insurance from Social Security. And it all comes out in the wash, but there is a bit of changing hands, money changes hands a little bit. So anyway, again, just rewind that if you want to hear it again. And as always, like, I'm available by email if you have questions about anything that I'm saying. Um, so I ended up going on long-term disability. My company let me go, and I was devastated. I thought I had no idea what was happening. I didn't know they were letting me go for my benefit. I thought they were like, they won't even hold on to me. Like, they're just ready to get rid of me. And that's not what was happening at all. The sooner that I am no longer employed by them, the sooner that I could receive Social Security disability 3 months down the road. So, something like that. So, so it worked out to my benefit. But when I shut that computer that day, I sent my boss a text and I said, I can't do this anymore. I need to apply for long-term disability. That was it. And he knew that I was just like, not knowing what the heck I was doing. And so then I walked down to my front porch and I sat down outside and I sobbed like a little girl. I sobbed and I sobbed and I was like, I just thought everything that I have ever worked for, all my hopes and dreams. No, everything that I was working for and the future that I had planned at this job. I was going to retire from that job. Like, that's what I always told my boss, that I'm not going anywhere. Actually, what I used to say is I'm going to stick around and find out how this story ends, all the chaos and drama. And he always used to laugh. But I was not planning on going anywhere. And there I was sitting on my front porch, like, that's it. That's it. Um, and so I sobbed and I thought I lost everything. I was thinking to myself, what do I have left? What do I have left? Um, and it came to me in a reply in my head fairly quickly. You still have your voice. And that was so prominent in my mind because while I was having my stroke, I had aphasia and I lost my voice, if you will. And so I picked up my phone and I texted my brother and I said, I need you to start a Spotify account. I'm going to start a podcast. And that's where we are today. But the journey from that day and the acceptance of, okay, I'm not going to be working. What the heck do I do? That would be a totally different podcast episode, which I'd be happy to talk about if you want to hear that. Um, but I think in summary, like, how do you know that the right decision is to leave your job? Like, how do you know that I'm not the right employee for this position anymore? I was a digital marketing director, and I had a staff of, at that time, like the most staff I had, I think ever at one time, was about eight staff members. And I think at that time maybe I had like three or four. And well, when I think about it now, in retrospect, I think, who would I want to hire to be a digital marketing director? It would be somebody who can, I don't know, look at the computer, somebody who can write and retain information. Like, in retrospect, I look back at the person who sat in that position before my stroke and the person who sat in that position after my stroke. And it's clear to me that I was no longer capable of doing the job. And that's a really, really shitty realization. It's really devastating to recognize that a stroke has stolen from you. My stroke stole from me so much um, that I was able to do. Today, of course, what I talk about is what I still can do. And that's important after the medical retirement, is to start thinking about, what can I do? I was talking about this topic, as a matter of fact, in my vestibular support group on Tuesday. The topic was, what do we miss from our career? And I couldn't help in the end but to shift the entire focus of the conversation on, not what do I miss, but what did I take away from my job? What did it give me that can't be taken away from me as I live my life in stroke recovery? And I know today that when I think about how the stroke took my ability to fill in the blank, um, what what it didn't take away from is my knowledge of how maybe I can't retain information the way that I used to, but I do know how to write better. If I can work on that ability to retain information at my own speed, in my own time, then I can continue to polish my writing skills. And I love to write. So that is where Rachel's book has been born. Like, I'm writing a book, and it's going to take a hell of a lot longer than pre-stroke Rachel would have taken to write a book, but it's something that I get to enjoy. It's something that my career taught me how to do. And with that, there's a lot of other creativity avenues that my career gave me that I've been enjoying also. But I stray from the topic. How do you know? You know. You know already. I don't think the problem is knowing whether to make the decision. It's accepting that the decision has to be made. It's letting go of who you were and starting to get comfortable with who you are now. And the Social Security disability and stuff like that, I was approved the first time around. I mean, I went to 10 million doctors. I have my MRIs and my CT scans from my stroke. I have neuropsychiatrist reports on what my cognitive deficits are. I have records from ENTs and neurootologists and headache neurologist and stroke neurologist. I have it all documented that this stroke changed me for the rest of my life. And then it's up to me to make the decision that, okay, my stroke changed my life. That means I need to change what I build my life around because it couldn't be what it was before. It just couldn't be. And the devastation, I don't think there's any way to minimize or make better the devastation of walking away from your career. Um, but the only thing that's going to make that part of you start to heal is to do it. It is to actually lean into it and start making the changes in your life that need to be made. Um, Looking back is not going to make it help you go back. Looking at the present is really the only way for me to live now, day to day. Um, and I can't stress enough how important it has been for me to talk to a psychiatrist every week. And I talk to her about this transition. I still do. How do I live without my career? And it's pretty obvious that I built a new career with the podcast and writing the book, and I've been painting and I don't know how I had time to work before. But I love focusing on recovery. I love helping other people. And it's not a bad life, but I couldn't be where I am comfortable and not in so much pain. I'm still in pain, but not so much pain without making that decision that I knew I had to make. So I hope this was helpful. Once again, if you have any questions for me, please reach out to me at Rachel@recoverydailypodcast.com. I'd be happy to hear from you and chat with you over email. So thank you for listening, and I will talk to you next time.